S.S.S. Emor, Tov Shin, Pei Daled. As you all know, we're now in the middle of, literally in the middle of Nesivos Shalom Emor, and these weeks between Pesach and Shavuos, the weeks where we count the days after Pesach, leading up to Kabbalas HaTorah, and it leads up to the Yom Tov of Shavuos coming up in just a couple of weeks. And as you all know, the Parsha of Nesivos Shalom Emor, where in the Torah, is in this week's Parsha also. So it's a perfect week to talk a little bit about the inyan of Nesivos Shalom Emor. And like we said, we're just about exactly halfway through the Omer. We're about halfway to the Yom Tov of Shavuos. And the Nesivos Shalom mentions from the Birkas Avraham, and he points out something very interesting, that on the Shabbos during Nesivos Shalom Emor, the Parshias of the Shavua that we read in the Torah many times about different things that relate to Tumah. We speak about, if you look at the Parshias between Pesach and Shavuos, we speak about Saras, we speak about different levels, different things of Tumah, and says the Birkas Avraham that the reason for this is that the Yemei HaSfira, it's not just that we're reading by coincidence about all these different types of Tumahs and things that people have to separate themselves from. The reason is that the Yemei HaSfira are actually misugul. It's an auspicious time for a person to work on inyanim of Tahara. A person wants to get better, to improve in inyanim of Tahara, that these Yemei HaSfira, we read about it just about every Shabbos, we read about it just every week during the Sfira. And we see that not only do we read about things like Saras and Tumah, but we also read about the other way. We read in the Parshias about Kedusha. You look at the first Parshias that we read, Parsha Shemini, we read about the holiness of how we eat, eating kosher foods, kosher animals, kosher fish, all these kind of things. And not only do we speak, on the one hand, about things about Tumah, but the Parshias between Pesach and Shavuos also speak about Kedusha. The Parsha, as we mentioned last week, we spoke about the Parsha of Kedosh, of being Kadosh, Kedoshim, T.U. And then, of course, there's our Parsha this week, Parshas Emor, where we speak about the Kohanim and what the Kohanim are allowed to do, when and where the Kohanim are allowed to be Mitame themselves. And as we continue on through our Parsha, after we speak about the Kohanim, at the beginning of the Parsha, we read in this week's Parsha about the Yomim Tovim. The Yomim Tovim, it starts with Pesach, we go from Pesach to Shavuos, to Rosh Hashanah, Yom Kippur, Sukkot. We read about all the Yomim Tovim, actually the Kriyas HaTorah that we read on Yom Tov many times comes from this week's Parsha. So we speak about another level of Kedusha, as we've spoken so many times, what a person has to be like, what a person has to feel like when it comes to Yom Tov, how we improve ourselves under Yom Tov. We speak about the Kedusha of Yom Tov, and it continues to go up from there. We look at next week's Parsha, and we're still, of course, in Sfira. Next week's Parsha, we're going to speak about another level of Kedusha. We're going to speak about the Kedusha of Eretz Yisrael. Next week's Parsha speaks about Shemitah and Yovel, and that, once again, is an inyan of Kedusha, something that a Yid has over every other person in the world, of this Kedusha of Eretz Yisrael. And Zokta Nesivos Shalom, that's really for the same reason, that during these days of Sfira and heading into Kabbalas HaTorah, not only are we meant to work on refraining from things of Tumah, but then the Torah turns around and says, once you protect yourself from those things of Tumah, from Achalas Asurais, like in Parshas Shemini, right? And then we go on to Negoim, taras. People have to refrain, watch what you speak, not to speak lashon hara. Once you speak about all those things that a person needs to refrain from doing, from staying away from tumah, then the Torah turns it around and says, now you can work on kedusha. Last week's parsha, Parshas Kedoshim, the Yom Tovim, and then moving on also to Kedushas Eretz Yisrael, where every person has to know that we, during the Nesivos Shalom Emor, we have to grow in the positive, not to just refrain yourself and not do things that we shouldn't do. You have to concentrate on growing. That's what every prayer. If you just don't do things and you refrain from doing things, so yes, you're improving in some way, but what we really want is that when we come to Kabbalas Torah, when we come to the Yom Tov Shavuos, when we finish, we go through an entire Nesivos Shalom Emor, we want to grow in the positive. We want to be different people going forward. We want to raise our level of Kedusha, where we're increasing our respect for the Yom Tovim. That makes a person into a better person. We want to become more in touch with the Kedusha of Eretz Yisrael. We want to understand what that's all about. So one of the highest levels, as we get to Shavuos, we're going to speak in next week's Parsha about Kedushas Eretz Yisrael. That has to become part of us, to respect Eretz Yisrael, to strive to be, to want to be, and do the mitzvahs haaretz, which are unique to Eretz Yisrael, Trumos, Maisos. Those of us who are lucky enough to be learning now the Daf Yomi of Yerushalmi, that we're going through so much that we don't get to learn really in Talmud Bavli about Maestris and Trumas and Bikurim. We're going to learn in Mir Hashem, and all these things of special inyanim, the unique kedusha of Eretz Yisrael, and that is really what Sfira says in the Nesivos Shalom. That's really what Sfira is all about. We say in the tefillah after the Sfira, l'taharenu mikliposenu metumosenu. We count Nesivos Shalom Emor that we should be metayer ourselves mikliposenu metumosenu. And once we're done with that, the tefillah continues. Afterwards, it says v'etor v'eskadesh b'kedusha shel Maila. First, l'tayer mikliposenu metumosenu. That's refraining from eating and talking and doing all the things that we're not supposed to do. To refrain from doing those things. And then we continue on. Again, this inyan of Kedusha, this inyan of growing in the positive and bringing more Kedusha into our lives. And that really is the preparation, the prep for Kabbalas Torah. And that's what Hashem wants from us for Kabbalas Torah. V'atem tiyuli mamleches koyanim, and what? The Goy Kadosh. It's one thing to separate, but Kedusha is also a proactive thing. And when people do, as it says in these Parshias, where once again we have the more respect for the Yom Tovim, respect for Eretz Yisrael, respect for the mitzvahs, Hatliyas Ba'aretz, all those things that we're saying in the Parshias now, that every one of those things brings us closer to Hashem. It makes us more worthy of a Kabbalas Torah. The Nesivos Shalom says from Rabbi Seinu Akdoshim, he doesn't say which one, but generally when it's Rabbi Seinu Akdoshim means it's from multiple good Hasidic sources, that the Pasuk says in Tehillim, a beautiful pshat, very good. We say when we daven Hallel, the Psukim in Tehillim says Einayim lahem v'lo yiru. They have eyes, but they do not see. And Oznayim lahem v'lo yishmo. Everybody's familiar with these words. We say it in Hallel. They have eyes, but they don't see. And Oznayim lahem v'lo yishmo. Says in the Nesivos Shalom a beautiful pshat. He says Hashem did a tremendous chesed. He gave us eyes. He gave us ears. Right? Rahman al-Islam, a person that cannot see, a person that cannot hear, they're lacking something so tremendous. Sometimes they don't even know what they're lacking if they were born without it. So it says in the Nesivos Shalom, Einayim lahem v'lo yiru. If a person uses their eyes for the wrong things, Einayim lahem v'lo yiro. If you use your eyes in a way that you shouldn't, v'lo yiro, then it's really impossible for you to see Hashem. It's not just like I'm going to look at something here that I shouldn't, and then now I'm going to go look at my siddur. If a person does the wrong thing with their eyes, then it's much, much more difficult. It's very, very hard to see HaKadosh Baruch Hu, to see in the world what you're supposed to be seeing from Hashem. And the same thing, he says, as Oznaim Lahem V'lo Yishmo, if our ears are open to Lashon Hara, to Rechilas, the things that are bad, the things that are negative, listening to speech that we should not listen to, then V'lo Yishmo, it goes just like with sight, you won't be able to hear and understand Torah. A person shouldn't think that I could sit and listen to, I could sit in my office, I could sit in my class, I could sit here and listen to shtusim of Lashon Hara and what rechilas and what people degrade other people, and then you're going to go to a Seder and learn. It doesn't work that way. Oznaim lahem v'lo yishmo means that if you use your ears for the things that are asur, you don't separate yourself from those things, and v'lo yishmo, you're not going to be able to hear. You're not going to really be able to understand and hear Torah the way you should. It's like there's a block over there. It's blocked. So the avodah during Nesivos Shalom Emor is really, as these parshiyos are teaching us, different aspects and different levels of kedusha. And the more work you put into it, and the more you do, the better Kabbalah HaTorah you're going to have. If you refrain from using your ears to listen to Dvarim or Asurim, Lashon Hara, which we see in one of the parshiyos, two of the parshiyos, in Sazria and Tzorah, we saw that what happens to a person that listens to Lashon Hara, the more that we refrain from doing that, the better and bigger Kabbalah HaTorah you're going to have. And the ultimate goal, really, V'nikdashti b'soich b'nei Yisrael, that's what Hashem wants. Hashem wants that we should become a place where the Shekhinah can reside within us. The entire, as we know, the entire Yetzias Mitzrayim was for this reason, that we should be Be'atem Tiyu Mamleches Kohenim B'Goy Kodesh. That's what HaKadosh Baruch Hu wants us. HaKadosh Baruch Hu doesn't demand from us things that we cannot do. Hashem wants us to always be working on ourselves, to look around and say, am I doing the right thing? Am I listening to the right things? Am I looking at the right things? And once, the more we separate ourselves from these things in the parashiyas that we see, that we should stay away from, that v'nikdashti b'soich b'nei Yisrael, then we become a place where HaKadosh Baruch Hu wants His Shekhinah to reside. Mamleches Kohanim v'goy Kodesh. And that is really how we earn the status of Am HaNivchar. We're the chosen nation, but we're not just chosen for no reason. We're the Am HaNivchar, and just as HaKadosh Baruch Hu at Yetzias Mitzrayim made us into the chosen nation for a reason, we have to figure out the way to retain and to hold on to that status. And Nesivos Shalom ends this piece by saying, as he always does, he brings it down to us and how it's speaking to us. He says, till now, we're talking about on a klal level. We're talking about everyone as Klal Yisrael. He says, just that there's a kedoshim to you on Klal Yisrael, just that it pertains to the entire klal, and in Yetzias Mitzrayim and Geula, all these things apply to each and every individual. And the more one works on the inyanim of kedusha, the more one works on these inyanim, as we said, of paying attention to respecting the Yom Tovim, Eretz Yisrael, the mitzvahs of Eretz Yisrael, the things that make us grow and make us more kadosh, the more you become a ben Am HaNivchar and a ben Torah. And that's how we march toward Kabbalah HaTorah, where we grow each week and we learn from the parsha something new that makes us into a better person, a place where Hashem wants His Torah to reside.